It all started on a quiet Saturday morning when I was out back, checking on my small vegetable patch. Tomatoes, lettuce, a few herbs, nothing fancy. Just part of my job, really. That's when she showed up, storming across the grass in heels, clipboard in hand and fire in her eyes. You'd think I was digging up buried treasure or hiding a goat in the garage. Nope, just farming. HOA Karen, as the neighborhood likes to call her, wasn't having it. She pointed at my garden like it was a crime scene and told me I was in violation of community guidelines. Then she said she was calling security and the police. Now, I wasn't looking for trouble. I tried to explain, kept it calm, but Karen wasn't listening. She was already threatening fines, eviction, and something about unauthorized soil use. That's when it got real interesting, because what she didn't know, what she couldn't have known, is that I'm not just some guy growing kale. I'm the actual state agricultural commissioner. Yeah, *1, and what she just called illegal farming, totally protected under state law. But I didn't tell her right away. I wanted to see how far she'd go. And trust me, things got way more intense from there. So while Karen was busy snapping photos of my zucchini like it was evidence in a federal case, I just stood there letting her rant. She kept going on about how our HOA doesn't allow agricultural activity, how it brings down property values, and something about how the mulch might attract pests. I asked her if she'd even read the HOA bylaws. She waved her clipboard like it was the Constitution. Then she pulled out her phone and started dialing, security first, then said she was calling the county. Now, here's where it gets even more interesting. The garden she was so worked up about, it wasn't even that big. Raised beds, neatly maintained, totally within the property line. But Karen had a reputation around the neighborhood. Everyone knew she'd made 3 different families take down their porch lights because they were too bright, and once filed a complaint about someone's wind chimes. This wasn't about gardening. This was about control. What she didn't realize is that I wasn't just growing vegetables for fun. This was part of a pilot program, one I personally approved, to encourage sustainable backyard farming across the state. My home garden was actually part of the initiative, but I wasn't going to explain all that just yet. I wanted to see how deep this rabbit hole went. About 10 minutes later, a golf cart came rolling up the street with 2 HOA security officers, kit on ties, notepads, the whole 9 yards. One of them looked about 19, probably just hoping to make it through his shift without drama. The other had the serious face of someone who really believed he was keeping the peace. Karen marched over to them like she'd just cracked a major case. She pointed at my garden at me, then back at her clipboard. I could hear words like unauthorized crops, zoning violation, and non-compliant property use being tossed around like we were on the verge of a scandal. I stayed quiet, just watching. Not because I was unsure of what to say, but because I wanted to see who was really pulling the strings. That's when my neighbor Sam peeked over the fence. He whispered, "She's been trying to get that garden shut down for weeks, even tried to get a petition going." Turns out Karen had been on a bit of a crusade. She believed backyard farming was a threat to community standards. Apparently, fresh basil was her breaking point. Meanwhile, the security guys asked if I had a permit. I nearly laughed. But instead, I said, "Let's go inside. I've got some documents you want to see." I could tell they weren't expecting what came next. I led them inside, my mind racing. This was it, the moment where I could either walk away from this whole mess, or, if I played it wrong, end up on the receiving end of a fine or worse, have to uproot everything I'd worked for. I opened the filing cabinet in my office, pulled out a stack of official-looking documents, and placed them on the table. "These are all the permits, certifications, and legal documents for this garden," I said, keeping my voice calm. But there was a fire starting to build inside me. Not only am I allowed to grow here, but I'm also promoting it through a state initiative. All of this is legal. All of it. Karen, standing by the door, crossed her arms. She looked less like someone following rules and more like someone on a mission to prove she was right. "I'm sorry, but this doesn't change the fact that it's still against HOA guidelines," she shot back. Her voice had that edge to it, the one that said she was absolutely sure she was in control of this situation. The security officers flipped through the papers, looking increasingly unsure. The younger one kept glancing at the older officer, who was clearly trying to process everything. They weren't ready for this. But Karen, she wasn't backing down. She turned to them, practically begging them to take action. "You have to stop this. This is an illegal farm. He's breaking the rules, and it needs to be dealt with." I could feel the tension building. It was like a ticking clock, and every second felt heavier. There was no way Karen would back off without a fight, and it was clear she wasn't going to accept anything less than a complete shutdown of my garden. The air in the room thickened with uncertainty, but I knew I couldn't back down either. The older officer finally spoke up, his voice measured but uneasy. "We'll need to make some calls. This isn't something we can just decide on the spot." Karen's eyes flared with frustration, and just as I thought we were finally going to get somewhere, her phone rang. She stepped outside, clearly annoyed, but I could see she wasn't giving up. Something about this whole situation felt off. Was she truly just a stickler for rules? Or was there something deeper going on here, something I hadn't uncovered yet? I watched her through the window, pacing as she talked angrily on the phone, and a knot of unease twisted in my stomach. Whatever was about to happen next, I could feel it was going to push this conflict to the breaking point. Karen came back inside, looking even more agitated than before. She slammed the door behind her, and I could tell something had changed. Whatever was happening on the other end of that phone call had set her off in a way I hadn't seen yet. The security officers exchanged looks, their tension mirroring mine. "What's going on?" I asked, though I already had a sinking feeling. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she turned to the officers and with a cold smile said, "You know, I think this whole thing can be handled a lot more efficiently if we get someone with more authority involved." My heart skipped. This wasn't just about her pushing her agenda anymore. She was playing a much bigger game. Seconds later, another vehicle pulled up outside, a sleek, black SUV that looked out of place in our quiet, suburban neighborhood. The two officers stiffened, their faces unreadable. Karen stepped aside to let a well-dressed man in his 50s enter the house. He wore a sharp suit, and the air around him was one of someone who was used to getting exactly what he wanted. Karen spoke with a certain respect now, a level of deference I hadn't heard before. "This is Mr. Davidson. He's from the HOA board, and he's the one who'll ensure this farm," she said the word like it was a dirty secret, "complies with the rules." I tried to hide my growing concern. If this was who I thought it was, Mr. Davidson wasn't just some HOA board member. He was the one behind all the major decisions. The person who had the power to shut everything down, not just locally, but across the entire state. I could feel the walls closing in. This wasn't just about Karen anymore. It was a full-on power play. And in that moment, I realized this wasn't about the garden at all. This was about control. They didn't just want my crops gone. They were after something much bigger. Something that, if I didn't act fast, could threaten everything I'd worked for. Mr. Davidson walked in with a kind of calm authority that made the room feel smaller. Karen stepped back, almost in awe of him, as if she were passing the torch. He looked at me for a moment, sizing me up, then shifted his gaze to the papers spread across the table. I knew what he was trying to do, scan for something, anything that could discredit me, something to push his agenda forward. But I wasn't about to let that happen. I stepped forward, my heart pounding in my chest, and said, "You're not shutting this garden down. Not now, not ever." He didn't even flinch. Instead, he smiled, but it was the kind of smile that made me uneasy. "Oh, I'm not here to shut anything down. I'm here to make sure you understand the consequences of crossing us. The HOA is a powerful organization, and we don't take kindly to people who think they can just bend the rules." For a moment, everything went quiet. The tension hung in the air like a thick fog. Then, just as I was about to speak, I noticed something strange. Behind Mr. Davidson, through the window, I saw a couple of my neighbors standing at the edge of the yard. At first, I thought it was just more curious onlookers, but then I realized they were holding signs. One of the signs read, "Support our commissioner, fight for local farming." My stomach dropped. I knew these neighbors, people I'd helped with gardening tips or tips on sustainable living. They weren't just standing there. They were actively showing their support, and that's when I understood the real twist.